Hello, this is Steve with another C1 video, Cambridge CAE. We're on to writing part 2, in which one of the options is a formal letter, and today in this video we're going to focus on how to write a great formal letter. We're going to think about the plan, think about the situation that you need to keep in mind as you write it, give you some useful phrases, and look at a sample answer so you really get some useful activities, some practical tips from it. If you've got a problem with any of that, then feel free to write me a letter suggesting how I can improve, what I did wrong, but make sure it's well written. Right, let's get into it. This is what you're going to be looking at when you've got the question. It's just a few lines about a situation that happened, saying you need to write to them something about complaining, something like that from the context. Could be a hotel, restaurant, bar, could be a course you attended, a shop, anything where there's some kind of transaction problem that went wrong. Now you need to plan something. And as always with your writing, the question, reading the question carefully, tells you what you need to write about. So here, you will notice that there are problems in plural. So you need to think of some problems. Something realistic that could happen when you stayed at a large hotel. Some detail. We're thinking about maybe the service. The staff were rude. They didn't help you. The cleanliness of the room. It was dirty in some way. There was some kind of problem. Maybe the room had, mechanical things broken. The air conditioning was broken. The other guests were too loud and you could hear them, or they were up all night. Some specific, realistic problem that you can go into detail with. And as I said, problems for this. Then, that's not where it finishes. You need to make sure you keep reading the question, because the next part is describe what happened when you complained to the staff. Now, the fact that this is included suggests to me that something also went wrong. Maybe they ignored you. They didn't take you seriously. That's why you're writing to the head office. You notice, write a letter to the company's head office. You're taking it up the chain and you're saying you're speaking to the manager, Karen. But here you have to be a little bit of a Karen. Ooh, I'm embarrassing. That's very cringe of me to use language like that. But you get what I mean. So you also have to read the whole question and say, what happened when you complained? I tried to talk to the staff, but they ignored me, or they said they would fix it and nothing happened. I imagine there's going to be something like that to include, because that's the situation. And then finally, suggest the way they could improve. Well, you have to think, how can a hotel improve? Maybe they can give you some money back. Well, that's not really them improving. You might want that, but that's not really them improving. Thinking about staff training, they should have changed your room, or they should have the possibility of changing a room when there's a problem. Do they need to fix the air conditioning, the heating, the shower, the water, something like that? I think the important thing here is to be clear and concrete. A hotel, you can't tell them, I don't think it was good enough and I expect it to be better. That's not really suggesting ways the company could improve its service. You're on the topic, but you're not really answering the question in all the detail that they want in a good answer. So that's what to write. As always, with a plan, read the question carefully, spend some time coming up with relevant, developed ideas. Criteria A, good ideas relevant for the question. That's what to write. What makes this a bit different from other types of writing is how to write it. And I think the key thing here, when we're thinking about a formal letter and about other types of writing really, is understanding the situation. How would you write to a company that had charged you hundreds or thousands of euro, dollar, pounds for a bad holiday? You wouldn't be happy. I mean, it's probably happened to many of you. It's happened to me with, hiring a car where they tried to rip me off and they tried to take lots of money, and I was not happy. And that informed how I was communicating. So you take it seriously, you write seriously, you are firm and forceful. You're still polite because you're writing to a professional organization. You want to be professional, polite, but you're going to be direct. It's going to be, well, as we said, maybe a neutral tone, maybe formal, edging on formal because it's a formal letter, but still, you can use some imperative, you can use conditional saying you should do this if you don't do this. This is all criteria B because you are communicating in an appropriate way given the situation. So that's where it's writing, but it's bigger than that. It's thinking, it's really thinking like, if this really happened, how would I write? That's what gives you a good answer. How would I write if this was a real situation? So try to treat it like a real situation. Okay, so those are the general ideas of what and how to write. let's get into a bit of detail. I'm going to have a few activities now with lots of expressions where, I'm giving you useful expressions for a formal letter. It's a fairly standard formulaic piece of writing. There's lots of expressions you can use: chop and change, insert, build, like Lego, building some nice phrases. So opening phrases. With each one, I'll give you a second to think about what it means. My first point is, dear job title. Sir or madam is a bit old-fashioned now. As a hip young person, as a woke member of the woke brigade, I recommend not using sir or madam because it's not very inclusive, it's very old-fashioned. Better to say the job title. So in this example we had before, you could say dear head office, dear the name of the company, which you're just going to invent, dear complaints department, public service department, something like that. Point is, you make something up. Or the safe option is, of course, as I said, these are the names. If they give you their name in the question, go for that. But the safe option is to it may is, of course, to whom it may concern. Whom, because it's the object. It concerns who, subject, verb, object is the object, so we use whom, to whom it may concern. Why are you writing? Well, it's a letter of complaint. I'm writing to express my something with a point, with or my with the service, something with satisfy. This is use of English part 3 if you didn't get the idea. You need to transform this word so it makes sense for a letter of complaint, like in use of English part 3. Always be thinking about how you can practice, because all the exam is linked. It's a C1 exam, meaning they're going to use the same kind of level, vocabulary, grammar in different parts. So if you are not happy, you are expressing disappointment or dissatisfaction with what happened. So it's some nice words you can use, and always say why you are writing, of course. Don't just start telling them a story about cockroaches in the hotel. No, I'm writing to express my disappointment, and so on. This one, I've mixed up the words. So please, in your exam, do not write, I would like to degol a flarum complaint against your many-cop for the reasons untoiled below, because that is nonsense. Obviously, what you should be writing is, pause it, think about it, try and answer it. I would like to lodge a formal complaint against your company for the reasons outlined below. That makes a bit more sense, doesn't it? And then this one, this is use of English part 2. I feel compelled, write to you in order to describe the bad service I received, my holiday last year, and so on. And you are compelled to do something in order, and it's in order to, which means to, but in order to is the phrase. So there we go. There's some opening phrases that are always going to be useful for your little introduction to your letter. Then you're going to start listing problems. So what we've got here is a little activity where we're going to say, first, this happened. I've given you an example. It could be anything, but this is, it's an activity to do in class. Then, not only this, but also this. This is supposed to be low water pressure, which is one of the worst things in the world, isn't it? When you've got a shower that doesn't wash you properly because there's low water pressure. But can you put that in a sentence? Can you mention on top of that, there was another thing that happened? And as if that was not enough, imagine that in the modern world. And then there's something with a straw and a camel's back. If you know this expression, trigger warning, that is a cockroach. You wouldn't want that in your hotel. This was the straw, and you might know that expression, which is a nice one for listing problems. So take a minute and try and write these sentences. And here's what I wrote. First of all, the airport transfer arrived nearly an hour late. Something about transport being late. Not only was there inversion, like we've looked at in part 4 of the use of English, not only was there no hot water at certain times, but the water pressure was also too low for a good shower. Not only was, but also not good. On top of that, paper thin walls, great Modest Mouse song, but these walls are paper thin, and I could hear the conversations from the neighbouring room. That's not what you want. As if that was not enough, the Wi-Fi signal was so weak that it was so weak that, again, I'm thinking about the impressive grammar. The grammar you see on a C1 use of English exam is the grammar you should be using in the writing, because that's what they think is C1 grammar, isn't it? So weak that it was impossible to use. Nice expression. And the straw that broke the camel's back was when we saw a cockroach in our bathroom. Oh dear, get out of there, not good enough. So some problems and how you would list them with some nice connecting expressions to really build up, this is where organization comes in. You're building up the sense of how bad this holiday was with first, then on top of that, these expressions are like building expressions. So nice way of getting some good criteria and see organization marks. Let's move on to the actual complaining part then. So I've got here some lovely expressions for saying it was bad. You're not just going to say the service was bad, the room was bad. You're going to vary your vocabulary with some of these expressions. What I'd recommend for this activity is write 3 of these where you have to use a bit of imagination. Imagine you just visited their hotel, bar, your partner's hotel, bar, restaurant, whatever, and you want to complain to them because something was not good enough. You need to come up with what it was and try and add a bit of detail to make it realistic and convincing, and to use these expressions. That's the important thing. Use the expressions, and this is helping you assimilate them, so you'll be able to use them in the exam. And they're all, these are impressive expressions if you can use them correctly. It shows you've studied. It shows you're not just saying it was bad, it was not very good. You got a wider range than that. So that's how to complain. After you've complained, you might want to request action. Why are you writing? Because you probably want something. So maybe you want a refund. And what I've done here is in this activity, the words in italics are in the wrong order. Unless you are Yoda, then you seem should fare that only, offer a full refund. No, that's not the correct order. You need to put them in the correct order. So as always, the words in italics, I'm only talking about italics. The words in normal alex are fine, but the words in italics you need to change. Pause the video, try and write these. Obviously, doing an exercise helps them go in, as always. So pause the video, write these expressions. In your notes for formal letter, write the expressions correctly. And here's the answers. It seems only fair that you should offer a refund. Seems only fair, I'm being very reasonable. Give me money, but I'm being reasonable about it. I would appreciate it if you did this, if you could do this. We use this with the past simple normally. And the same for I would be grateful if you could, if you gave me, if you provided me, and so on. Next one's a bit more complicated. It's the old threatening the lawyer. And you better watch this video or else I'll get my lawyer on you. You will be hearing from my lawyer. That's the expression, isn't it? Should these demands not be met, you will be hearing from my lawyer. Should meaning if. We can use should at the start of a sentence to mean if, and it makes a sense, doesn't it? If these demands are not met, but we say should these demands not be met. And the last one, talking about money, 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 money. I expect to receive compensation to the tune of, and then the number. To the tune of just means approximately, around, and it's a nice expression to talk about with money. So that's how we request action. Then after that, the other thing we often do in a letter of complaint is recommend how they improve, as it said in our first example. So what I've done here, can I make this any more complicated? I have got some nice expressions for recommendations, and I've turned them into Use of English Part 4 questions. So the first one, the idea that you want to say is, I really think your organisation should implement a better staff training programme. We understand the idea. It's not very formal though, is it? I really think it's a bit too direct, a bit too conversational. It really is a little bit informal. So can we say this with strongly? As always, try and do all these by yourself. Take 5 minutes for 3 questions, so we're looking at 5 minutes. And here are the answers. Well, the first trick here is strongly collocates with recommend. And you are recommending. I think you should do this as a way of saying I recommend. So it's going to be I strongly recommend. Then how do we use recommend? Well, the trick here is we could say I strongly recommend implementing, because we often use recommend with the gerund, with ing. But it says implements. So we can't do that. We have to think about I strongly recommend that, and then we get it, don't we? I strongly recommend that your organisation implements. For the next one, advise, but you need to say be. So be, we're thinking about be is going to be followed by an adjective, like it is good. I advise you do it. It is, what's the adjective form of advise? It's advisable. So it would be advisable to ensure that you ensure it will be advisable to ensure rooms. That's how we'd say the same thing. And the last one with suggest, and we've got in my opinion, so you're suggesting something. Your procedures regarding should be re-evaluated. This is passive, and we are making it a bit more active, aren't we? I suggest, you suggest, same as recommend with ing normally. So I suggest re-evaluating. What are we re-evaluating? Your procedures regarding. But we've got to. So how do we say regarding with to? We say with regards to. I suggest re-evaluating your procedures with regards to. Can we say suggest that you re-evaluate your procedures with regards to? No. This is where I made a very good question, a bit too good. It must be ing because suggest that doesn't fit, too many words. So I suggest re-evaluate. It's a long way of giving you some nice expressions for recommendations in a formal letter. Okay. And to finish, signing off, and I've made it a use of English part 3 this time. Thank you for your what. We need a noun. It's going to be consideration. I look forward to receiving your reply. Okay. I hope it is not to ask for a prompt reply. So it's not, well, I don't want to be unreasonable. I want to be reasonable. So I hope it's not unreasonable. And then we finish with yours faithfully. Remember, faithfully because we don't know their name. And in this letter, it didn't give us any name. We were writing to the hotel manager, the head office, the name of the company. So we can say yours faithfully. If you know their name, you can say sincerely. The way I remember this is you are sincere with your friends. You know their name, you say sincere. That's just my little trick to remember it. I don't know if it works for anyone else, but I've remembered it, so maybe it should. So that's how we're signing off. And you've now got lots of functions to fulfill with expressions in the formal letter. What would come next? We've sort of looked at criteria A, B, and D. What about criteria C? Organisation, connecting these ideas together. Well, we've got the same kind of connecting words as we saw with an essay. It's going to be in view of the problem, I expect. Furthermore, moreover, for problems, there was a problem, therefore what should happen, and so on. How do you connect your ideas? With some nice formal writing connectors. Well, there you go, you've got them. Try and use them in your plan and in your writing. Now let's look at a little example. So what we've got here is an example of a very similar question, a self-catering holiday that didn't go very well. And we're starting with a use of English part 2. If you want to do this, it's just a way of making sure you read it. You've got to read it because I want you to read it to see why this is a good formal letter. Please read it and try and think what word goes in the gaps. It's a difficult use of English part 2. Pause the video, read it, write the words that go in the gaps. We're back. Here are the answers. Had I known the accommodation would be so poor. This is another way of saying if I had known. It's a third conditional. To make matters worse, or to make it worse, but to make matters worse is a really nice expression. Never before have I seen terrible service, such terrible service. Number 4, well, what would you do? If there's all these problems, it's not surprising that you would book another room. So not surprisingly, I booked another room. You ask, finally a bit of an easy one, you ask for something, compensation. You want a refund, look at the documents. This will help you decide what to do, the thing that you have to do. At the very, well, this is a long way of saying at the very least, at least, inform me of the action you will take with 2 more extra spending. We just saw this expression, it's with regards to, meaning in relation to. And as we can see, I'm going to contact my lawyer. Okay, so this is a good answer. Why? Can we think about why this is a good answer? I'm going to focus today on the grammar and vocabulary. So criterion D, language, of what makes this a good answer. We can see the other points. The content is relevant. The style is clear. It's well organized. It builds up, as we talked about, listing problems, then saying what you want. It's all fine. Let's focus on the grammar and vocab. And as a C1 teacher with lots of experience, what stands out here? When I see a piece of writing from a student who has passed C1, What's the kind of thing they are writing? What makes me think, oh yeah, that's a higher mark? Well, first we're starting with some slightly easier things, but these are all good. You complain about something. You know how to use this verb correctly. Complain about something. That's good grammar. Self-catering holiday. I guess this was in the question, but you've used it correctly. Good vocab. You've used the adjective of a what type of holiday? A self-catering holiday. Now, little details like this. This is the kind of thing that people who don't speak English as their first language get wrong. The trip lasted for 2 weeks. It was a 2-week trip. It's a 2-week trip because now we're using this like an adjective. And adjectives are invariable. We don't say 2 red cars. That sounds very strange. So it's a 2-week trip because we're using it like an adjective. We don't put an S on it. Then for your bit of vocab, bad experience? No, awful experience. Again, variety in your vocab. Had I known, of course, this is a very impressive way of giving a conditional. If I had known, no, had I known. And then the conditional was used correctly, would, well, it's actually a mixed conditional, isn't it? If I had known it would be, I would have booked. It's a mixed conditional. Be careful with your mixed conditionals. This one's okay. If you just want to stick to third conditional because you've studied that for use of English, no problem. What have we got here? Everyone on 3, 1, 2, 3. Inversion, of course. Not only was the room dirty, this should say the room was dirty. But no, because it's not only, we have inverted the room dirty and was the room dirty. But, and we've used the inversion correctly, the shower was unusable. Wow, use of English part 3 much. Use, usable, unusable. And also we are condensing ideas down, aren't we? I couldn't use the shower. You can say all that in one word, unusable. So you're really communicating your ideas efficiently. To make matters worse, lovely expression, correct collocation. I get another inversion, never before have I seen, not I have seen, no, never before have I seen. Imagine my anger. Everyone knows the word angry, I am angry. Can you use it as a noun? Imagine my anger without having showered. Use of the present participle. We've got a preposition and then ing, present participle, having showered. Starting a sentence with an adverb. I talked about this in the essay. There's almost always a possibility of doing this, and it's a nice little tick. They're varying their connections. They're starting a sentence differently. They're showing their range. A simple one, relative pronouns, but like I keep saying, if it's something on the C1 grammar exam, which relative pronouns are, then use it in your writing because that's C1, and it's very easy for them to say, oh, they know how to use these C1 structures. Vouchers, bit of variety of the vocab, coupons, vouchers. She advised me to take my time. How do we use the verb advise? You advise someone to do something. Advise, then a person, then an infinitive. You've used it correctly. Well done. I enclose, this is impressive vocab, saying I've enclosed documents with this letter, or I guess in more modern times it would be attach, because this would be an email really, so you would attach some documents. Again, we start a sentence with a gerund, like I talked about in the essay. Knowing how much money will help you. So instead of saying it would help, or that, you start with a gerund and you're varying your sentences again. And then the last one, this is very complicated, but I would like you to. Because it's would like, it must be to. So it's would like you to, and then do what? Inform me of something. So again, how do you use the verb inform? You inform someone of something. Inform me of the action. Then we've got another conditional, unless this happens, but instead of using if, we're using unless. And then I shall have no other option. Wow, this is just very impressive vocab to use shall instead of will, which is possible sometimes. It's okay here because we're being like very direct. I shall do it. It's almost stronger than will do it, although it's very similar really. And no other option, using the zero, like we talked about, no food, no water, no choice, no chance, no other option. And but, meaning except. This is more grammatical, but it's all very, very impressive. And then maybe I didn't say the last thing, but of course, it's a letter, yours faithfully. Ilona Martinez. Great work. Only thing I don't like, as I said, dear sir or madam, but maybe this is an old example from back when it was okay to sexually harass people and to say dear sir or madam at the start of your letters. But now it's not, so don't do either of those things. Summary, that's it. Let's get an end of this formal letter. I've got a checklist. So when you've written a formal letter and sent it to me or a friend or a random hotel who would be very surprised to see someone complaining about an imaginary situation, use this list to make sure you've used a lot of impressive formal letter structures and ideas. So passive to make it formal, formal linking or linked, no contractions, try to avoid I'm, isn't, and so on. Polite but direct. Super important, why are you writing? Problem, compensation, consequences, and then make sure your salutations, hello, goodbye, are all correct. Right, that's the formal letter. Good luck. See you next time.